Clara's knees hit this frozen ground, and she didn't try to get up. The baby in her arms had stopped crying 2 days ago. That silence terrified her more than the cold, more than the hunger eating through her bones. Behind her, Maggie carried 4-year-old Bess on her back. Theo stood between them barefoot, his small hand gripping Clara's frozen skirt like it was the only thing keeping him alive. She had walked for 5 days. She had nothing left. Then she heard the horse. If this story touches your heart, subscribe now and follow Clara's journey to the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Clara pressed William closer to her chest and felt his heartbeat flutter against her ribs. Too fast. Too weak. Like a bird trapped in a fist, fighting to break free, but losing strength with every passing hour. "Mama!" Maggie's voice cracked behind her. "Mama Bess is shaking real bad." Clara turned her head. Her eldest daughter stood 3 feet back, her 8-year-old shoulders bent under the weight of her little sister. Bess had wrapped herself around Maggie's neck. Her face buried her body, trembling in waves that had nothing to do with tears. "Put her down," Clara said. "Rest your arms." "I can't." Maggie's chin trembled. "If I put her down, I don't know if I can pick her up again." Clara looked at her daughter's bare feet, blue at the toes, red at the heels where the skin had cracked and bled. She looked at Theo, 6 years old, standing in the snow like a ghost. He hadn't spoken since they left the house 5 days ago. Not one word. His eyes stared at nothing, and Clara didn't know if he was still in there, still her boy, or if something had already broken that couldn't be fixed. "We keep moving," Clara said. "Where?" Maggie asked. "Mama, where are we going?" Clara didn't answer. She didn't know. Medicine Lodge was somewhere east, maybe 15 miles, maybe 20. She'd heard there was a church there, people who helped widows and orphans. But she wasn't a widow. She was something worse. She was a woman whose husband had simply walked away. 6 weeks ago. Samuel had kissed her forehead, told her he'd be back from Cheyenne in 10 days, with enough money to see them through winter. She'd believed him. She'd always believed him. He never came back. The food ran out after 2 weeks. Clara fed the children boiled bark and snow. When the stove cracked from the cold, she couldn't fix it. When the landlord came demanding rent she didn't have, he'd given her 3 days. She'd packed what she could carry and walked. Now here she was, middle of the Kansas prairie. February, temperature dropping, baby dying, children freezing, and no idea which direction would save them and which would kill them. The horse's hooves crunched through the snow behind her. Clara spun around, her heart slamming against her chest. A man on a paint mare emerged from between 2 bare cottonwood trees. Tall in the saddle, dark coat stiff with frost, wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his eyes. He reined in the horse and sat still, just looking at them. Clara stepped in front of her children. Her legs shook, but she planted her feet. "We don't have nothing," she said. "No money, no food, nothing worth taking." The man didn't move, didn't speak. "You hear me?" Clara's voice rose. "We got nothing. So whatever you're thinking, it ain't worth your time." The man swung down from his horse, slow, deliberate. Like a man approaching a wounded animal, he didn't want to spook. His boots sank deep into the snow as he walked toward her. Clara's hand went to her pocket. The knife was still there. Small, dull, wouldn't do much damage, but she'd use it if she had to. He stopped 6 feet away, pushed his hat back. His face was weathered, lined around the eyes, a scar running from his left ear down his jaw and disappearing into his collar. His eyes were pale gray, the color of winter sky. Tired, but not cruel. "Ma'am," he said. His voice was low, rough, like gravel under wagon wheels. "How long since those children ate?" Clara's jaw tightened. "That ain't your concern." "It is now." He looked past her at Maggie, struggling to hold Bess, at Theo, standing frozen in the snow, at the bundle in Clara's arms that hadn't made a sound. The baby's sick. I said it ain't your concern. Ma'am. He took another step forward. Clara raised the knife. He stopped, looked at the blade, then looked at her eyes. Something shifted in his face. Not fear. Something else. Recognition, maybe. Like he understood exactly what she was. My name is Emmett Cole, he said. I got a cabin 4 miles north, fires burning, pot of soup on the stove, coffee, blankets. He paused. I ain't the law. I ain't looking to hurt you. I ain't looking for nothing from you. Just saw you from the ridge and figured you could use some help. We don't need help. He looked at her children again. At their bare feet. At their hollow faces. At the baby who hadn't moved. Your boy there, he said, nodding toward Theo. His lips are blue. That ain't cold anymore. That's the dying kind of cold. He met Clara's eyes again. I know you don't trust me. I know you got every reason not to. But that baby in your arms, he won't make another night out here. You know it. I know it. Clara's chest constricted. Her vision blurred. She blinked hard, refused to let the tears fall. Why? She whispered. Why would you help us? Emmett Cole looked at the snow, then back at her. Because I can, he said. Ain't got a better reason than that. Behind her, Bess started to cry. A weak whimpering sound barely louder than the wind. Mama! Maggie's voice broke. Mama, please! Clara turned and looked at her daughter, 8 years old, carrying her sister for 5 days, feet bleeding, eyes begging. She turned back to Emmett Cole. If you're lying, she said, if you're planning something, I swear to God, I ain't lying. He pulled off his glove with his teeth and held out his bare hand. Come on, let me get you warm. Clara stared at his hand, calloused, scarred, weathered from work. She didn't take it, but she nodded. Emmett turned and whistled low and sharp. From behind the trees, a wagon emerged, pulled by a sturdy bay horse. He walked to it, lowered the back gate, and pulled out a thick wool blanket. Get the children in, he said. I'll wrap them up. Clara walked to the wagon on legs that barely held her. She lifted Theo first, setting him on the wooden bed. The boy didn't react, didn't look at her, just sat where she put him, staring at nothing. Emmett moved to Maggie and held out his arms. I'll take the little one. Maggie pulled back, clutching Bess tighter. It's all right, Clara said softly. Let him help. Maggie looked at her mother, then slowly released her grip. Emmett lifted Bess, gently cradling her against his chest as he set her in the wagon next to Theo. Then he turned back to Maggie. Can you climb up yourself or you need a hand? Maggie lifted her chin. Even exhausted, even terrified, she had her mother's pride. I can do it. She climbed into the wagon and immediately pulled Bess into her lap, wrapping her arms around her sister. Emmett looked at Clara, at the bundle she held. The baby, he said. He needs warmth. Clara shook her head. I'll hold him. Ma'am, you're near frozen yourself. You can't warm him when you got no heat left to give. He stepped closer and his voice dropped. Let me carry him. Just till we get to the cabin. I'll keep him against my chest under my coat. Body heat's the only thing that might save him now. Clara's arms tightened around William. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. This was her child, her baby, the only piece of this broken life that was still fully hers. But Emmett Cole was right. She could feel it in her own bones. She was cold, so cold that she couldn't warm her own skin, let alone a sick infant. She looked up at him, searched his face for any sign of threat, any hint of cruelty. All she saw was patience. Slowly, carefully, she lifted William and placed him in Emmett's arms. The man took the baby like he'd done it 1,000 times. Gentle, sure. He unbuttoned his coat, tucked William against his chest, and buttoned it back up, leaving just the baby's face visible. He's breathing, Emmett said. That's something. Clara's throat closed. She couldn't speak. Emmett helped her into the wagon, then climbed up front and took the reins. The wagon lurched forward, wheels creaking against the frozen ground. Clara sat between her children, pulling them close, sharing what little warmth they had. Maggie leaned against her shoulder. Theo sat rigid, still silent. Bess had stopped crying and closed her eyes. 4 miles. 4 miles to whatever waited for them. Clara watched the back of Emmett Cole's head, the set of his shoulders, the way he held the reins with one hand while the other stayed pressed against the bundle inside his coat, protecting her son. She didn't know if this was rescue or just another kind of ruin. But for the first time in 5 days, she felt something other than despair. She felt hope, and that terrified her most of all. The cabin appeared through the trees as the last light of day bled out of the sky. Smoke curled from a stone chimney. The roof sagged on one side, patched with newer boards that didn't quite match. A porch leaned against the front of the house like a tired man resting. But there was light in the windows. Warm, golden light. Emmett pulled the wagon to a stop and jumped down. He came around to the back and lowered the gate. "I'll carry the little ones in," he said. "You can walk." Clara nodded. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else, but she could move them. Emmett lifted Bess first, still asleep in Maggie's arms. He carried her inside and came back for Theo. The boy let himself be lifted without reaction, without acknowledgement, like a doll being moved from one place to another. Maggie climbed down on her own and stood in the snow looking at the cabin. "Is this his house?" she asked. "Seems like it," Clara said. "Is he going to make us leave?" Clara looked at her daughter, 8 years old and already learning that kindness usually came with conditions. "I don't know," Clara said honestly. "But we're going to stay warm tonight. That's what matters." They walked inside. The cabin was one room, but it was clean and ordered. A table with 2 chairs, a cot against one wall, a stove in the corner, fire crackling inside. Pots and pans hung from hooks, linens folded on a shelf. No empty bottles, no mess, no signs of the chaos Clara had learned to associate with men who lived alone. Emmett had set the children on the cot, piling blankets around them. He still held William against his chest. "Water's heating," he said. "Got soup from yesterday. Ain't fancy, but it'll fill the belly." He looked at Clara. "You should sit, before you fall." She wanted to argue, wanted to prove she didn't need to be taken care of. But her body had other ideas. Her knees buckled and she grabbed the edge of the table to catch herself. Emmett moved fast for a man with a limp. He was beside her in 2 steps, one arm around her waist, guiding her to a chair. "Easy," he said. "Easy. You're safe now." Safe. Clara almost laughed. She hadn't felt safe in years. Emmett pulled William from inside his coat and placed him in Clara's arms. The baby was warm. His color had improved pink, returning to his cheeks. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, then closed again. "He needs milk," Emmett said. "I don't have any, but I got a goat in the barn. Come morning I can nurse him," Clara said quietly. "Just needed to get warm enough for my body to work again." Emmett nodded, understanding. He turned away to give her privacy. Clara opened her dress and brought William to her breast. At first nothing happened. Then slowly, the baby latched. He drank weakly, but he drank. Tears rolled down Clara's face. She didn't wipe them away. At the stove, Emmett ladled soup into tin bowls. He brought one to Maggie first, then helped Theo hold his. The boy's hands were shaking too hard to manage alone. "Careful," Emmett said. "It's hot. Small sips." Maggie looked at the soup, then at Emmett. "Why are you doing this?" He paused. "Doing what?" "Helping us. You don't know us." Emmett considered the question. Clara watched him, curious to hear his answer. "I found a dog once," he said finally. 5 years back. Dead of winter like now. Half frozen in a ditch. Skinny as a rail. I brought him in, warmed him up, fed him. He bit me first chance he got." He almost smiled. But he lived, and after a while he stopped biting. Maggie frowned. "We ain't dogs." "No, you ain't. But some things you don't walk past. Don't matter if it's a dog or a person. Some things you help. That's all." Maggie looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned to her soup and ate. Clara watched the man move around his cabin, stoking the fire, checking on Theo, laying out another blanket for Bess, who had fallen asleep clutching a corner of the quilt. He didn't look at Clara, didn't ask questions, just worked quiet and efficient. When the children were fed and settled, he finally sat down in the other chair, poured himself a cup of coffee but didn't drink it, just held it in his hands, letting the warmth seep into his fingers. "You got people anywhere?" he asked. "Family." Clara shook her head. "Mama died when I was 14. Daddy drank himself to death 3 years later. I got no brothers, no sisters, no one." The children's father. Clara's jaw tightened. "He left 6 weeks ago. Said he was going to Cheyenne for work. Never came back." Emmett nodded slowly. "You know if he's dead or just gone?" "Don't know. Don't much care anymore." He didn't press further. They sat in silence. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind picked up howling around the corners of the cabin. But inside it was warm, safe, quiet. Finally, Emmett stood. He walked to the door, pulled a bedroll from a hook, and laid it on the floor near the entrance. "I'll sleep here," he said. "You and the children take the cot and the floor by the stove. Warmest spots in the house." Clara frowned. "This is your home. I can't take—" "You ain't taking nothing. I'm giving it." He looked at her, and his pale eyes held something she couldn't name. "You're safe here. You don't owe me nothing. Stay as long as you need." He lay down on the bedroll, pulled his hat over his eyes, and turned toward the door. Clara sat in the chair for a long time after watching the fire die down. William slept against her chest. On the cot, her children breathed slow and deep, warmer than they'd been in weeks. She looked at the man on the floor, at the rifle beside him not in his hands, at the scar on his jaw, at the way his bad leg bent at an odd angle, like it had been broken wrong and healed worse. She didn't understand him, didn't trust him, but he'd saved her children's lives tonight. That had to count for something. Clara closed her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she didn't dream of death. She dreamed of nothing at all. Dawn came through the cracks in the walls like it wasn't sure it wanted to enter. Gray light, cold and thin, spreading across the floor. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of movement. Emmett was already up, standing at the stove, pouring hot water into a basin. His limp seemed worse in the morning, his left leg dragging as he moved. She sat up slowly. William stirred in her arms, but didn't wake. "Children still sleeping?" Emmett asked without turning around. Clara looked at the cot. Maggie, Theo, and Bess lay tangled together under the blankets, faces peaceful in sleep. "Yes," she said. "Good. Let them rest." He brought her a cup of coffee, then stepped back. "How's the baby?" Clara looked down at William. His color was better. His breathing was even. He felt warm, but not feverish. "Better," she said. "I think he's better." Emmett nodded. "Good." He moved to the door, pulled on his coat, and picked up his hat. "I'm going to the barn," he said. "See to the animals. You need anything, holler. I'll hear you." "Mr. Cole?" He stopped, hand on the door. "Thank you," Clara said. The words felt strange in her mouth. She couldn't remember the last time she'd said them and meant them. For last night, for everything. He stood there for a moment, his back to her. Then he nodded, once opened the door, and stepped into the cold. Clara sat alone in the quiet cabin, holding her son, listening to her children breathe. She didn't know what would happen next. Didn't know if Emmett Cole's kindness had limits. Didn't know if the world would let her rest for more than a single night. But right now, in this moment, her children were alive. They were warm. They had food in their bellies and blankets around their shoulders. For the first time in 6 weeks, Clara allowed herself to feel something she'd buried deep beneath the fear and the hunger and the endless walking. Hope. Small and fragile, like a candle flame in a storm. But there, still there. 3 days passed before Clara stopped sleeping with one eye open. She woke each morning before dawn, heart-pounding hands reaching for children who were still there, still breathing, still alive. The fear didn't leave. It just grew quieter, settling into the back of her mind like a dog that had learned to lie down but never fully slept. Emmett Cole moved through his days like a man who had forgotten how to share space with others. He rose before first light, tended the animals, chopped wood, and mended fences. He spoke when spoken to, answered questions with as few words as possible, and never once asked Clara to explain herself. On the 4th morning, she found him at the stove stirring oatmeal with a wooden spoon that had been worn smooth from years of use. "I can do that," she said. He didn't turn around. "You should rest." "I've rested enough." She walked to him close enough to smell the wood smoke and leather that clung to his coat. "Mr. Cole, you saved my children's lives, but I ain't the kind of woman who sits idle while someone else does the work." He stopped stirring, turned to look at her. "You ain't strong enough yet," he said. "I'm stronger than I look." Something flickered in his pale eyes. Not quite a smile, but close. "All right," he said. He handed her the spoon. "Tomorrow, then." "Today." He studied her for a long moment. Clara held his gaze, refusing to look away. She'd spent too many years backing down. Those days were over. "Today," he agreed finally. "But you eat first. Can't work on an empty stomach." Clara took the spoon and turned to the stove. Behind her, she heard him pull on his boots and open the door. Cold air rushed in sharp and clean. "Mr. Cole." He paused. "Thank you," she said, "for not treating me like I'm broken." The door closed behind him without a response. But she thought she heard something in the silence. Something that sounded almost like understanding. Maggie appeared at her elbow, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Mama Bess wet the bed again," Clara sighed. "Get the sheets off. We'll wash them after breakfast." "Where's the man?" "His name is Mr. Cole, and he's in the barn." Maggie frowned, her small face pinched with suspicion. "Is he coming back?" Clara looked at her daughter, 8 years old, and already expecting abandonment. Already waiting for the next person to walk away. "Yes," Clara said firmly. "He's coming back." "How do you know?" "Because this is his home, and he invited us to stay." Maggie didn't look convinced, but she nodded and went to strip the bed. Clara turned back to the oatmeal, stirring slowly, watching the thick porridge bubble and pop. She didn't know if Emmett Cole would keep his word. She didn't know if any man could be trusted to stay when staying got hard. But she knew one thing for certain. If he tried to hurt her children, she would kill him. And if he proved himself true, she would spend the rest of her life trying to repay him. Either way, they weren't leaving. Not yet. Not until she knew which kind of man he was. The morning passed in a blur of small tasks. Clara washed the sheets, hung them to dry near the stove, fed the children, and swept the floor with a broom whose bristles were mostly gone. She found a rhythm in the work, a familiar pattern that settled her nerves. Around midday, Emmett returned from the barn. He stamped the snow from his boots and hung his hat on the hook by the door. "Wind's picking up," he said. "Might storm tonight." Clara nodded. "I can help with the animals before it hits." "You know horses." "I know enough." He looked at her, then at the children. Theo sat in the corner, staring at the wall. He hadn't spoken since they arrived. Hadn't reacted to anything around him. Just existed, quiet and unreachable. "The boy," Emmett said carefully. "He always liked that." Clara's chest tightened. "No, he used to talk all the time. Couldn't get him to stop." She paused. "Something broke when his daddy left. I don't know how to fix it." Emmett nodded slowly. Sometimes things break clean and heal fast. Sometimes they break crooked and take longer. He moved toward the door. Come on, I'll show you the barn. They walked together through the snow, their boots crunching in unison. The wind cut through Clara's borrowed coat, but she didn't complain. After 5 days of walking through worse, this was nothing. The barn was small, but solid. 2 horses stood in the back stall, one black with a white blaze, the other a red roan with intelligent eyes. Emmett led her to the roan first. This is Copper, he said. Gentlest horse I ever owned. Won't bite, won't kick. Good with children. Clara reached out and let the horse smell her hand. Copper's nostrils flared, then he pressed his nose against her palm. He likes you, Emmett said. That's good. Horses know things about people. What things? Whether they're safe, whether they mean harm. He paused. Copper don't like mean folks. Won't go near them. Clara stroked the horse's neck, feeling the warmth beneath her fingers. And the other one? That's Shadow. He's mine. Bit temperamental but loyal. Won't let anyone ride him but me. She looked at the black horse. Shadow stood still watching her with dark, wary eyes. He doesn't trust easy, she said. No, ma'am. He don't. Emmett's voice was soft. Had him 10 years now. Still takes him a while to warm up to new people. But once he decides you're worth it, he'll follow you into hell and back. Clara met his eyes. Something passed between them, an understanding that had nothing to do with horses. Mr. Cole, she said, why do you live out here alone? He was quiet for a moment. Then he turned away, reaching for a pitchfork. Used to have a brother, he said. We ran cattle together after the war, built this place from nothing. Then the fever came through in 75. Took him in 3 days. He forked hay into Copper's stall, his movements mechanical. After that, the bank came for the herd. Couldn't keep up with the payments on my own. Lost everything except this land. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. He set the pitchfork aside. Point is, I know what it's like to have everything taken. I know what it's like to start over with nothing. He looked at her. That's why I helped you. Because I remember what it felt like to need help and have no one offer it. Clara's throat tightened. She wanted to say something that would tell him she understood, that she saw him, that his kindness meant more than she could express. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she just nodded. They worked in silence for the next hour, mucking stalls, hauling water, checking the goat that provided milk for the baby. Clara's muscles ached, but it was a good ache, the ache of being useful again. When they finished, Emmett led her back to the cabin. The children were where she'd left them. Maggie reading to Bess from an old Bible, Theo sitting alone in the corner. But something was different. Theo was looking at the door, not through it, not past it, at it, waiting. When Emmett stepped inside, Theo's eyes followed him. Just for a moment, just a flicker of awareness. Then he looked away again. Clara's heart stuttered. Mr. Cole, she said quietly, would you mind if Theo came to the barn with us tomorrow? Emmett hung his hat on the hook. He want to? I don't know, but I think he needs something I can't give him. Emmett looked at the boy in the corner. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture, a decision being made. All right, he said. Tomorrow. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara sat by the fire and watched the flames dance. Emmett sat across from her, mending a bridle with steady hands. Can I ask you something? She said. He didn't look up. You can ask. The scar on your face. How'd you get it? His hands paused. Just for a second. Then they resumed their work. War, he said. Battle of Chickamauga. September of 63. I was 16. Clara did the math. That made him 35 now. Older than she'd thought, but younger than he looked. The years had been hard on him. You fought for the Union. I did. He tied off a knot and examined his work. My daddy was a Texas Ranger, believed in the Union even when most of Texas didn't. Got him killed for it. Me and my brother joined up the day after we buried him. Your brother was killed in the war. No, he made it through. Emmett set the bridle aside. Survived 4 years of fighting, came home in one piece. Then a sickness took him in his own bed, in his own home, when there weren't no enemy left to fight. He shook his head. Never did make sense to me. A man survives all that just to die like that. Clara understood. She understood better than she could say. My mama died of consumption, she said. Coughed for 2 years before it took her. I was 14, watched her waste away to nothing, and there wasn't a thing I could do. Emmett looked at her, really looked. That's a hard thing for a child to carry. It made me strong. Did it? She met his gaze. What else was I supposed to do? Fall apart. Someone had to keep the house running. Someone had to cook and clean and pretend everything was fine while my daddy drank himself stupid every night. Her voice hardened. So yes, it made me strong, because being weak wasn't an option. Emmett nodded slowly. I reckon we're the same that way. Life didn't give us a choice about being strong, just did it to us and expected us to survive. And we did. We did. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind howled. Mr. Cole. You can call me Emmett. Clara hesitated. First names meant something. Meant a level of familiarity she wasn't sure she was ready for, but he'd earned it. He'd more than earned it. Emmett, she said. Thank you. For listening. For not making me feel like a burden. He stood, walked to the door, and picked up his bedroll. You ain't a burden, he said quietly. You're a guest. There's a difference. He lay down by the door, pulled his hat over his eyes, and said nothing more. Clara watched him for a long time. Then she closed her eyes and let herself sleep. The next morning, Emmett kept his word. After breakfast, he walked to the corner where Theo sat and knelt down, bringing himself to the boy's eye level. Hey there, he said. His voice was soft, careful. Your mama says you might want to see the barn. There's a horse in there named Copper. He's real gentle, likes children. Theo didn't respond, didn't even blink. Emmett didn't push. He just stayed there, kneeling, patient as stone. You don't have to talk, he said. You don't have to do nothing you don't want. But if you want to come, I'd be glad to have you. He stood slowly and walked to the door, pulled on his coat, picked up his hat. He was halfway out when Clara heard it. A shuffle. She turned. Theo was standing. He walked to the door on unsteady legs, his bare feet silent on the wooden floor. He stopped beside Emmett and looked up at him with hollow eyes. Emmett looked down at the boy. His expression didn't change, but something gentled in his face. All right then, he said. Let's go meet Copper. He held out his hand. Theo didn't take it, but he followed. Clara watched them walk to the barn together, the tall man with the limp and the silent boy with the empty eyes. Her heart swelled with something she couldn't name. Maggie appeared beside her, holding Bess's hand. Mama, is Theo going to be okay? Clara watched her son disappear into the barn. I don't know, baby, she said honestly. But I think Mr. Cole might help. How? Clara didn't answer. She didn't know how to explain it. Didn't know how to put into words what she saw happening between that broken man and her broken son. But she felt it. Something was beginning. Something that might just save them all. An hour later, Theo came back from the barn. He still didn't speak, but he was carrying a piece of wood. And that night, sitting by the fire, he started to carve. The days that followed fell into a pattern. Clara woke before dawn, started the fire, made breakfast. Emmett tended the animals, fixed what needed fixing, and came back smelling of horses and hay. The children grew stronger, Bess stopped coughing. William gained weight. Maggie's feet healed pink scars replacing the raw wounds. And Theo. Theo started spending every morning in the barn with Emmett. He still didn't speak, but he listened. He watched. He learned. Emmett showed him how to brush Copper's coat, how to check the hooves for stones, how to fill the water trough without spilling. He never raised his voice, never pushed, never demanded. He just worked, and let Theo work beside him. On the 7th day, something changed. Clara was hanging laundry near the stove when the door opened. Theo walked in, snow dusting his shoulders, cheeks red from the cold. He walked straight to her, and he spoke. "Mama." Clara's heart stopped. "Mama Copper likes apples. Can we give him one?" She stared at her son, her silent, broken, unreachable son. He was looking at her, really looking, eyes clear, present, alive. Clara dropped to her knees and pulled him into her arms. She didn't cry. She wanted to desperately, but she didn't. She just held him, feeling his small body warm against her chest. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, baby. We can give him all the apples he wants." Behind them, Emmett stood in the doorway. Clara looked up at him over Theo's shoulder. "Thank you," she mouthed. He nodded once. Then he turned and walked back to the barn, leaving them alone. That night, after the children slept, Clara found Emmett on the porch. He sat on the steps, looking up at the stars. His bad leg was stretched out in front of him, and he rubbed it absently, working at the ache she knew never fully left. She sat down beside him. "How did you do it?" she asked. "Do what?" "Bring him back. My son. He hasn't spoken in weeks. Then one morning with you and a horse, and he's—" "It wasn't me." Emmett's voice was quiet. "It was Copper. Animals don't judge, don't ask questions, don't expect anything except kindness. Sometimes that's what a person needs. Someone who don't want nothing from them except to be near." Clara pulled her coat tighter against the cold. "You're good with children." "Never had any of my own." "Why not?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Never found a woman who'd have me, and after my brother died I stopped looking. Figured I was meant to be alone." "Do you still think that?" He turned to look at her. His pale eyes caught the starlight. "I don't know," he said. "I don't know what I think anymore." They sat in silence, breath clouding in the frigid air. "I should go in," Clara said finally. "It's cold." "It is." But neither of them moved. "Emmett." "Yes." She hesitated. The words were dangerous. The words could change everything. "I'm glad we found you," she said. "Or that you found us. However it happened. I'm glad." He looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded. "Me too," he said. Clara stood and walked to the door. She paused with her hand on the latch. "Good night, Emmett." "Good night, Clara." She went inside and closed the door. And for the first time since she'd arrived, she didn't just feel safe. She felt like she belonged. 2 weeks later, a visitor came to the cabin. Clara heard the horse before she saw it. She was hanging laundry when the sound of hooves reached her ears and her blood went cold. She dropped the sheet she was holding and ran inside. "Maggie, take the children to the back corner. Stay quiet. Don't come out until I tell you." Maggie's eyes went wide, but she didn't argue. She grabbed Bess and Theo and herded them behind the stove, pulling a blanket over them. Clara picked up the rifle Emmett kept by the door. She didn't know how to shoot it, not really, but she knew how to hold it. The door opened. A woman stood on the porch. Old, weathered gray hair pulled back tight. Her face looked like it had been carved from leather lined and creased from years of sun and wind. "You gonna shoot me?" the woman asked, eyebrow raised. Clara lowered the rifle. "Who are you?" "Ruth Jennings. I live 3 miles down the river." She looked past Clara into the cabin. "Heard Emmett Cole took in a woman and some children. Came to see if the rumors were true." "They're true." Ruth studied her with sharp eyes. You his wife? No. His woman? No. Clara's voice hardened. I'm his guest. He saved my children's lives. That's all. Ruth made a sound that might have been a laugh. That's all. Sure. She pushed past Clara into the cabin, looking around with an appraising eye. Place looks better than last time I saw it. You been cleaning? It's the least I can do. Ruth spotted the children huddled behind the stove. You can come out? I ain't gonna bite. Maggie emerged slowly, Bess clutching her hand. Theo stayed close behind them. 3 young ones, Ruth said. And a baby from what I hear. 4 children, yes. Ruth looked at Clara again. Her expression was unreadable. You know what people in town are saying, don't you? Clara's jaw tightened. I can imagine. They're saying Emmett Cole's taken a whore into his home. That you're paying for your keep on your back. That ain't true. I know it ain't. I've known Emmett Cole for 15 years. He ain't the type. Ruth sat down in one of the chairs uninvited. But truth don't matter much when people want to believe a lie. Makes them feel better about their own miserable lives. Clara didn't know what to say. She stood by the door rifle still in her hands, feeling exposed. Put that thing down before you hurt yourself, Ruth said. I didn't come here to cause trouble. I came to help. Help how? Ruth reached into her bag and pulled out a bundle wrapped in cloth. Brought soup, and some clothes for the children. My daughter's old things. Might fit the girls. Clara stared at the bundle. Her throat tightened. Why? She whispered. Ruth looked at her, and something softened in those hard eyes. Because I was you once, she said. Long time ago. Husband left me with 3 boys and no money. Thought I was going to die. Thought my children were going to die. She paused. A stranger helped me. Didn't ask for nothing in return. Just helped because it was the right thing to do. And you're doing the same. I'm trying. Ruth stood. Emmett Cole is a good man. One of the few left in this God-forsaken territory. You treat him right, you hear, don't break his heart. Clara blinked. I'm not. I got eyes, girl. I see the way he looks at you. And I see the way you look at him when you think no one's watching. Ruth walked to the door. Just don't hurt him. He's been hurt enough. She left without another word. Clara stood in the doorway watching her ride away. Maggie appeared at her side. Mama, who was that? A neighbor. Clara looked down at the bundle in her arms. A friend, maybe. Are people really saying bad things about us? Clara knelt and looked her daughter in the eye. People say bad things about everyone. What matters is what we know to be true. And the truth is, we're safe here. We're fed, we're warm. That's what matters. Maggie nodded slowly. I like it here, Mama. I know, baby. I don't want to leave. Clara pulled her daughter close. We won't. Not unless we have to. She held Maggie for a long time, feeling the girl's heart beat against her own. And she made a promise to herself. Whatever it took, she would protect this fragile, broken, beautiful thing they were building. Whatever it took. Spring arrived like a thief in reverse. It didn't take. It gave. The snow melted in patches, revealing brown grass underneath. The creek swelled with runoff, its voice changing from silence to a low, constant murmur. Birds returned to the cottonwoods, filling the mornings with sounds Clara had forgotten existed. She stood at the window, watching Theo chase Bess across the muddy yard. They were laughing. Both of them. Laughing like children who had never known hunger, never known cold, never known the particular terror of a mother who couldn't save them. William squirmed in her arms, reaching for the light. You want to see? Clara shifted him to her hip. Look, your brother and sister are playing. The baby gurgled, his fat fists waving at the window. Behind her, Emmett's boots scraped against the floor. Heading into town, he said. Need nails for the fence, some flour, maybe coffee if Hendricks has any. Clara turned. I could go with you. He paused, hat in hand. You sure? I've been here 2 months. Haven't seen anything but this cabin and the barn. She looked at him steadily. I'm not afraid of what people say. It ain't about fear, it's about... I know what it's about. She walked to him close enough to see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. I know what they think, what they're saying. But hiding here won't change their minds. Only showing them who I am will do that. Emmett studied her face. Something shifted in his expression. All right, he said. Get your coat. I'll hitch the wagon. An hour later, they rode into Medicine Lodge together. The town was bigger than Clara expected. A main street lined with wooden buildings. A general store, a saloon, a church with a white steeple. People moved along the boardwalks going about their business. And every single one of them stopped to stare. Clara felt their eyes like hands on her skin. Judging. Measuring. Finding her wanting. She lifted her chin and looked straight ahead. Emmett pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the general store. He climbed down, then turned to help Clara. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. Yes, I do. She took his hand and stepped down from the wagon. The store was dim and crowded with goods. Barrels of flour and sugar, bolts of fabric, tools hanging from hooks. A glass case filled with candy that made Clara think of Maggie, who hadn't had anything sweet in months. The man behind the counter looked up as they entered, middle-aged, balding, with a belly that strained against his vest. Emmett, he said. Been a while. Hendricks. Emmett nodded. Need some things. I heard. Hendricks' eyes slid to Clara. Heard a lot of things. Clara met his gaze without flinching. I'm Clara Dawson. I'm staying at Mr. Cole's homestead with my children. Dawson. Hendricks leaned on the counter. Any relation to Samuel Dawson passed through here about 2 months back. Owed money to half the town. Clara's stomach dropped. He's my husband. Was wondering where he got to. Left owing me $6. I don't have $6. I don't have 6 cents. But if you'll allow it, I'll work off his debt, whatever it takes. Hendricks stared at her. Then he laughed a short, surprised sound. Well, he said, that's more than Samuel ever offered. He glanced at Emmett. She always this direct. She is. Huh. Hendricks shook his head. Tell you what, you come in next week, help my wife with the inventory, and we'll call it square. She's been after me to hire help for months. Clara felt something loosen in her chest. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. My wife's a hard woman to please. He turned to Emmett. Now what did you need? While Emmett gave his order, Clara wandered through the store. She stopped at the fabric, running her fingers over a bolt of blue calico. Pretty, practical, the kind of thing she could make into a dress for Maggie. She didn't have money for it, but she could look. The door opened behind her. Cold air swept in, carrying a voice she didn't recognize. Well, well, Emmett Cole. Heard you'd taken in a stray. Clara turned. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, broad, with a face that might have been handsome if it weren't so cruel. He wore a fine coat, too fine for a town like this, and his boots were polished to a shine. Emmett straightened. His expression didn't change, but Clara saw something harden in his eyes. Finch, he said. It's been too long, neighbor. The man called Finch walked into the store, his eyes finding Clara immediately. And who might this be? None of your concern. Everything in this territory is my concern. You know that. Finch stopped in front of Clara close enough that she could smell the tobacco on his breath. Jasper Finch, ma'am. I own the ranch to the south of Mr. Cole's property. Biggest spread in 3 counties. Good for you. Finch's smile widened. Got some fire in you. I like that. I don't much care what you like. The smile flickered, just for a second. Careful, Finch said softly. You're new here. You don't know how things work. I know how things work everywhere. Clara stepped around him, moving toward Emmett. Small men with big land try to push people around. It's the same story in every town. Finch's face darkened. He took a step toward her. Emmett moved between them. He didn't touch Finch, didn't threaten, just stood there. A wall of calm. "We're done here," Emmett said. "Are we?" Finch looked over Emmett's shoulder at Clara. "Tell me, Mrs. Dawson, is that what you call yourself? Does your husband know where you are? Does he know you're playing house with a cripple?" Clara's blood turned to ice. "How do you know my name?" "I know everything that happens in this territory." Finch smiled again, but there was no warmth in it. "Samuel Dawson is still alive, last I heard, gambling in Dodge City, losing more than he wins as usual, but alive." He paused. "Which means you're still married. Which means whatever you're doing with Mr. Cole here is, well, let's just say the good people of Medicine Lodge have opinions about that sort of thing." Emmett's voice was cold. "Get out, Finch. I'm a customer same as you." "You're not the same as anything." Emmett stepped closer, and Clara saw his hands curl into fists. "You've been trying to buy my land for 5 years. It ain't for sale. It never will be. And whatever you think you're doing right now, it ain't going to change that." Finch held up his hands in mock surrender. "Just being neighborly, Cole. Just making sure the lady knows what she's gotten herself into." He tipped his hat to Clara. "Ma'am, I'm sure we'll see each other again." He walked out, leaving the door open behind him. Clara realized she was shaking. Emmett turned to her. "You all right? Who was that at Jasper Finch? Biggest rancher in the area. Been trying to buy out smaller homesteads for years. Uses lawyers when he can, intimidation when he can't. And he wants your land. Has for a long time. It's got the best water access in the valley. Creek runs right through it." Emmett's jaw tightened. "He can want all he likes. He ain't getting it." Clara looked at the door where Finch had disappeared. Her hands were still trembling. "He knew my name. He knew about Samuel." "Finch makes it his business to know things. Uses information like a weapon." "So what do we do?" Emmett looked at her. His eyes were hard, but his voice was gentle. "We go home," he said. "We live our lives. We don't let him scare us. And if he keeps pushing, then we push back." He offered his hand. Clara took it. They finished their business and rode home in silence. The sun was setting by the time they reached the cabin, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ruth Jennings was sitting on the porch. "About time," she said as they pulled up. "I've been waiting an hour." Clara climbed down from the wagon. "Is everything all right?" "The children?" "Children are fine. Fed them supper. The older girls got them playing some game in the back." Ruth stood brushing off her skirt. "I came to warn you." "Warn us about what?" Ruth looked at Emmett, then back at Clara. "Finch has been talking, going around town telling anyone who'll listen that you're living in sin with Emmett Cole. Says he's going to report it to the circuit judge when he comes through next month." Clara's stomach twisted. "Report what? We haven't done anything wrong. Don't matter what you've done. Matters what people think you've done." Ruth's voice was sharp. "A married woman living with a man who ain't her husband. In this territory, that's enough to get you run out. Maybe worse." "I ain't leaving." "Then you better figure out a way to make it legal, or at least look legal." Emmett stepped forward. "What are you saying, Ruth?" The old woman looked at him with knowing eyes. "I'm saying you got 2 choices, Emmett Cole. Either she leaves, or you marry her." The words hung in the air. Clara felt her face flush. "That's not, we can't." "Can't or won't." Ruth shook her head. "Pride's a luxury, girl. One you can't afford right now. Neither can those children." She walked to her horse mounted and looked down at them. "Think about it," she said. "But don't think too long. Finch ain't a patient man." She rode off into the fading light. Clara and Emmett stood in the yard, not looking at each other. "She's wrong," Clara said finally. There has to be another way. Maybe. We barely know each other. You can't marry someone you barely know. People do it all the time. Clara turned to face him. Is that what you want? To marry a woman out of obligation, out of convenience? Emmett was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. Is that what you think this would be? She didn't answer. Clara. He stepped closer, and she could see the firelight from the window reflected in his eyes. I ain't asked for nothing from you. I ain't expected nothing. But if you think I took you in out of charity, if you think I've been feeding your children and mending your son, and lying awake at night thinking about you because it was convenient. He stopped, took a breath. I'm not good with words, he said. Never have been. But I know what I feel. And I know that when you leave this cabin every morning to hang the laundry, I watch you from the barn. I know that when you laugh at something, one of the children says it's the best sound I've heard in 10 years. I know that when you told off Jasper Finch in that store today, I wanted to... He shook his head. I ain't asking you to marry me out of obligation. I'm asking because I want to. Because the thought of you leaving makes me feel like I'm losing my brother all over again. Clara's chest ached. She wanted to reach for him, wanted to close the distance between them and feel his arms around her. But she couldn't. Samuel's still alive, she whispered. I'm still married. I know. So, what are you asking me? Emmett looked at her. His face was open, vulnerable, in a way she'd never seen before. I'm asking you to stay, he said. Whatever that looks like. However we have to do it. I'm asking you not to leave. Clara closed her eyes. The wind was cold on her face, but inside something warm was spreading through her chest. I'm not going anywhere, she said. When she opened her eyes, Emmett was still watching her. Then we'll figure out the rest, he said. Together. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay on the cot listening to her children breathe. William made soft sounds in his sleep, his tiny fist curled against her chest. Bess was tucked under Maggie's arm, their hair tangled together on the pillow. Theo slept near the stove, the wooden horse he'd carved, clutched in his hand. Her children were safe, fed, warm, because of Emmett Cole. She turned her head and looked at the dark shape by the door. He was asleep, or pretending to be, his body a shadow against the faint glow from the dying fire. What did she feel for him? Gratitude, certainly. Respect. Trust, which was harder for her than love had ever been. But was it love? Did it matter? Samuel had promised her love. Promised her the world. And then he'd walked away when the world got hard. Emmett Cole didn't promise anything. He just showed up. Every day. Every morning and every night. He fixed what was broken. He fed what was hungry. He waited for her son to speak without pushing, without demanding. He asked for nothing. And somehow, that made her want to give him everything. She closed her eyes and tried to quiet her mind. Tomorrow. She would think about it tomorrow. But sleep was a long time coming. 3 days later, the telegram arrived. A rider from town brought it a young man with mud-splattered boots and a nervous expression. He wouldn't meet Clara's eyes when he handed her the paper. She stood on the porch, Emmett beside her, and read the words that changed everything. Samuel Dawson, alive. Stop coming to claim family. Stop arriving Medicine Lodge within fortnight. Stop. The paper trembled in her hands. Clara. Emmett's voice seemed far away. Clara, what is it? She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. He took the telegram from her hands and read it. His face went still. When was this sent? 3 days ago, the writer said. Telegraph office in Dodge City. Emmett nodded. Thank you. The writer left. Clara stood frozen on the porch, her mind spinning. Samuel was coming. Samuel who had left her to die. Samuel who had abandoned his children without a second thought. Samuel who the law still said was her husband. He was coming to take them back. No. The word came out of her mouth before she realized she'd spoken. Emmett looked at her. Clara? No. She turned to face him, and her voice was stronger now. Harder. I won't go with him. I won't let him take my children. I don't care what the law says. I don't care what anyone says. He left us. He chose to leave. And now he thinks he can just come back and claim us like property. The law. Damn the law. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I would rather die than go back to him. I would rather take my children and walk into the wilderness and let the wolves take us than let that man touch them again. Emmett reached for her. His hands were warm on her shoulders, steadying her. Listen to me, he said. Listen, you ain't going anywhere. You ain't going with him. But we got to be smart about this. We got to think. Think about what he's their father. The law says a man has a right to his wife and children. But the law also says a man can't abandon his family. And that's what he did, Clara. He abandoned you. Left you with no food, no money, no way to survive. There are witnesses. The landlord who threw you out. The people in Cheyenne who saw him gambling while his children starved. Clara stared at him. You think a judge would care? I think a judge might. If we present it right. If we have people willing to speak for you. Who would speak for me? I'm a stranger here. No one knows me. Ruth knows you. Pastor Whitmore knows you. I know you. Emmett's voice was firm. And I know Sheriff Tate. Served with him in the war. He's a good man, a fair man. If we tell him what happened, if we get him on our side before Samuel arrives. You think it would matter? I think it's our best chance. Clara looked at him. At this man who had saved her life, saved her children's lives, and was now fighting to keep them safe. Why? She whispered. Why are you doing this? He didn't hesitate. Because you're mine now, he said. All of you. Whether we got a piece of paper that says so or not. You're mine, and I protect what's mine. Clara's heart cracked open. She had spent so many years protecting herself, protecting her children, never letting anyone in, never trusting anyone to stay. But here was this man, this quiet, scarred, limping man, offering her everything without asking for anything in return. Emmett? Yeah. She reached up and touched his face, felt the rough stubble, the ridge of his scar, the warmth of his skin. If we survive this, she said. If Samuel comes and we get through it somehow. I want to stay. I want to stay here with you forever. Not because of the law. Not because of what people think. Because I choose to. He covered her hand with his own. Is that a proposal? It's a promise. He turned his head and pressed a kiss to her palm. Just once. Just briefly. But it was enough. Then let's go talk to the sheriff, he said. And then let's get ready for your husband. The word tasted like ash in Clara's mouth. Husband. Samuel had been her husband once, but that was a long time ago, a lifetime ago. Now she had something better. Now she had hope. The next morning they rode into Medicine Lodge together. Sheriff Marcus Tate was a big man with a thick mustache and eyes that had seen too much. He listened to their story without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When they finished, he leaned back in his chair. That's quite a tale, he said. It's the truth, Clara replied. I believe you. Tate looked at Emmett. You vouch for her. With my life. Tate nodded slowly. Samuel Dawson, I remember him. Came through here a couple months back. Charming fellow. Owed money to everyone. He drummed his fingers on the desk. Left a trail of bad debts from here to Dodge City. He also left his wife and children to starve, Emmett said. So you say, and I believe you, but believing ain't the same as proving. Tate stood and walked to the window. When a man comes to claim his family, the law's usually on his side, unless... Unless what? Tate turned back to them. Unless he's wanted for something, a crime. Something that would give me cause to hold him. Clara's heart sank. He's not a criminal. Just a coward. Cowardice ain't illegal, unfortunately. Tate sat back down. But abandonment is. At least it can be if you can prove harm. If you can show that his leaving directly caused danger to you and the children. My baby almost died. My children walked barefoot through the snow for 5 days. Isn't that enough? It might be, for the right judge. Tate looked at her with something like sympathy. I'll do what I can, Mrs. Dawson. When your husband arrives, I'll talk to him, find out his intentions. If he causes trouble, I can hold him for disturbing the peace, but I can't promise more than that. What about marriage? Emmett asked. If Clara and I were married, would that change things? Tate raised an eyebrow. You can't marry a woman who's already married. What if she wasn't? What if Samuel Dawson abandoned her so completely that the marriage could be dissolved? That would take a judge, a hearing, witnesses. Tate shook his head. It could be done, but not in 2 weeks, not before he gets here. Clara felt the hope drain out of her. Then what do we do? Tate looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his desk and pulled out a piece of paper. There's one thing, he said. It's not legal, not official, but it might buy you some time. What is it? A declaration. A statement signed by me saying that you've been living under my jurisdiction as a single woman with children, that your husband abandoned you and has made no claim for 2 months. That in my opinion, you have the right to make decisions for yourself and your family. Would that hold up in court? Probably not, but it might make Samuel think twice about making a scene, and it might give the judge something to consider when the time comes. Clara looked at Emmett. He nodded. Do it, she said. Tate wrote quickly, his pen scratching across the paper. When he finished, he signed his name with a flourish. Here. He handed her the paper. Keep this safe. And when your husband arrives, you send for me. I'll be there. Clara took the paper. Her hands were steady now. Thank you, Sheriff. Don't thank me yet. Tate looked at her with grave eyes. This is just the beginning. The hard part's coming. She knew he was right, but for the first time, she felt ready for it. They rode home as the sun began to set. Clara held the paper against her chest, feeling its weight like a talisman. It's not enough, she said. It's something. He's going to come. He's going to walk up to that cabin and demand that I leave with him. And legally, he has every right. Legally. Emmett's voice was hard. Law ain't always the same as justice. What are you saying? He didn't answer for a moment. The wagon wheels creaked beneath them, and the horse's breath steamed in the cold air. I'm saying, he said finally, that I won't let him take you. No matter what the law says, no matter what anyone says. If he tries to force you, I'll stop him. Emmett, I know what that might mean. I know it could cost me everything. The land, my freedom, maybe my life. He looked at her, and his eyes were fierce. But I'd rather lose all of that than lose you. Clara's throat tightened. You barely know me. I know enough. He reached over and took her hand. I know you're strong. I know you're brave. I know you love those children more than your own life. I know you've been hurt, and you're scared, and you don't trust easy. His grip tightened. And I know that when I'm with you, I feel like I'm finally home. She couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Clara. His voice was soft now. Whatever happens next, I want you to know. You changed my life. You and those children. You gave me something I thought I'd never have again. What? A reason to keep going. The tears came then. She couldn't stop them. They rolled down her cheeks, warm against her cold skin. Emmett pulled the wagon to a stop. He turned to her, cupped her face in his rough hands, and wiped her tears away with his thumbs. We're going to get through this, he said. Together. I promise. She believed him. For the first time in her life, she believed in someone other than herself. Together, she whispered. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing each other's air, hearts beating in time. Then he pulled back, picked up the reins, and drove them home. The cabin appeared through the trees, smoke rising from the chimney. Inside, their children were waiting. Inside, their life was waiting. And whatever came next, Clara knew one thing for certain. She was done running. She was done hiding. This was her home now, and she would fight for it with everything she had. 12 days passed. 12 days of waiting. 12 days of watching the horizon, jumping at every sound of hooves, lying awake at night, listening for footsteps that never came. Clara moved through her chores like a woman made of glass. She cooked, cleaned, tended the children, helped Emmett with the animals. But her mind was elsewhere. Always elsewhere. Always on the road from Dodge City, always imagining Samuel's face when he finally appeared. Maggie noticed first. "Mama, you're stirring the pot wrong." Clara blinked, looked down. The oatmeal had burned to the bottom of the pan. Black smoke curled up from the edges. "I'm sorry, baby. I'll make more." "Mama." Maggie's voice was serious. Too serious for an 8-year-old. "Is he coming, our daddy?" Clara set the pot aside and knelt in front of her daughter. "Yes," she said. "He's coming." "Are we going to have to leave?" "No." "Promise." Clara looked into her daughter's eyes, saw the fear there, the same fear that had lived in her own chest for weeks now. "I promise," she said. "We're not leaving. This is our home now." Maggie studied her face, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I believe you." She walked away to help Bess with her shoes, leaving Clara kneeling on the floor with her hands shaking. She had made a promise she wasn't sure she could keep, but she would die trying. On the 13th day, Samuel Dawson rode into Medicine Lodge. Ruth brought the news. She appeared at the cabin just after noon, her horse lathered from hard riding. "He's here," she said. "Arrived this morning, staying at the boarding house in town." Clara's blood went cold. "Did he ask about me?" "Asked everyone. Made a whole show of it. The grieving husband searching for his lost wife and children." Ruth spat on the ground. "Half the town believed him." "And the other half? The other half knows what kind of man he is." Ruth looked at Emmett. "Sheriff Tate's watching him. Said he'd send word if Samuel heads this way." "How long do we have?" "Could be hours, could be days. Depends on how bold he's feeling." Emmett nodded. "Thank you, Ruth." "Don't thank me. Just be ready." She looked at Clara with something like pity in her hard eyes. "You prepared for this?" "No," Clara said honestly. "But I don't have a choice." Ruth studied her for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. "You're stronger than you know, girl. Remember that." She rode off without another word. Clara stood in the yard, her heart pounding. "What do we do?" she asked. Emmett was already moving. "We prepare. Get the children inside. Keep them there. I'll load the rifle." "Emmett." He stopped. "Don't hurt him," she said. "Whatever happens, don't hurt him. I don't want you going to prison for me." His jaw tightened. "If he threatens you, then we handle it, together, but we handle it without bloodshed." She walked to him, put her hand on his chest. "Promise me." He was silent for a long moment. "I'll try," he said finally. "That's all I can promise." It wasn't enough, but it would have to do. They waited. Clara gathered the children inside and explained as gently as she could that their father might be coming to visit. Maggie's face went hard. Theo retreated to the corner, clutching his wooden horse. Bess didn't understand, just kept asking if the visitor would bring candy. William slept in his cradle, oblivious to the storm gathering around him. Emmett sat by the window rifle across his knees. He didn't speak, just watched. The hours crawled by. Late afternoon. The sun began its descent, painting the sky orange. And then they heard it. Hoofbeats. Coming fast. Clara's stomach dropped. "Stay here," Emmett said. He stood, checked the rifle, and walked to the door. "Emmett, wait!" But he was already outside. Clara ran to the window and looked out. A single rider was approaching, not from the road to town, but from the south, from Finch's land. It wasn't Samuel. It was Jasper Finch himself. Clara felt a different kind of dread settle into her bones. Emmett stood on the porch, rifle held loose but ready. Finch reined in his horse and dismounted. He was smiling. That cold reptilian smile that made Clara's skin crawl. "Cole," he said. "Beautiful evening, isn't it? What do you want, Finch?" "Just came to deliver a message. Thought you'd want to hear it from a friend." "We ain't friends." "No, I suppose we're not." Finch walked closer, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps. "Your lady's husband arrived in town this morning. Did you know?" "We know." "Do you know he's been talking to people, asking questions, building a case?" Finch's smile widened. "He's got witnesses, Cole. People who saw Mrs. Dawson leave with you. People who say you've been living together for months. People who are willing to testify that you stole another man's wife." Emmett's knuckles whitened on the rifle. "I didn't steal anyone. She came to me half dead in the snow." "That's not how Samuel tells it." Finch shrugged. "But that's between you and him. I'm just the messenger." "Then deliver your message and get off my land." Finch's expression changed. The smile disappeared, replaced by something colder. "I came to make you an offer," he said. "One time only. Sell me your land, right now, tonight. I'll pay fair market value, maybe a little more. You take the money, you take the woman and her children, and you disappear. Start fresh somewhere else. And if I don't, then things get complicated." Finch stepped closer. "Samuel Dawson owes me money, Cole. Quite a lot of money, actually. We made an arrangement. I pay his debts, he does me a favor." Clara's heart stopped. "What kind of favor?" she whispered from behind the window. Finch looked up, saw her watching. His smile returned. "The kind where he makes a big scene, goes to the judge, accuses Mr. Cole of adultery, kidnapping, whatever else we can make stick. Gets everyone so riled up, they forget about property rights and water access and all the things that really matter." He spread his hands. "It's not personal, Mrs. Dawson. It's business." Clara felt sick. This whole time she'd been afraid of Samuel. But Samuel was just a pawn, a tool being used by a bigger predator. Emmett's voice was deadly calm. "Get off my land, Finch. Think about my offer, Cole. You have until tomorrow morning to decide." "I've already decided. The answer's no." Finch sighed like a parent disappointed in a stubborn child. "Then I'm sorry for what happens next," he said. "Truly." He mounted his horse and rode away without looking back. Clara stumbled out onto the porch. Her legs were shaking. "Emmett." He turned to her. His face was pale. "He's using Samuel," she said. "This whole thing, it's not about me. It's about your land." "I know." "What do we do?" Emmett looked out at the horizon where Finch had disappeared. "We fight," he said. "Same as always." That night, Clara couldn't eat. She sat at the table pushing food around her plate while the children ate and chattered around her. Maggie kept shooting her worried glances. Theo had retreated back into silence. Even Bess seemed subdued, picking at her beans, without enthusiasm. After supper, Clara put the children to bed. She kissed each forehead, tucked each blanket, whispered each prayer. "Mama," Maggie said as Clara turned to leave. "If Daddy comes, are you going to talk to him?" Clara sat on the edge of the bed. "Yes." "What are you going to say?" "The truth. That he left us. That he doesn't get to come back and pretend nothing happened." Maggie was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I don't want to see him." "You don't have to. Theo doesn't either. He's scared." Clara looked at her son, curled up on his cot with his back to them. His shoulders were tense even in sleep. "I know," she said. "I'll protect him. I'll protect all of you." How? It was such a simple question. Such an impossible question. I don't know yet, Clara admitted. But I will, I promise. Maggie reached out and took her mother's hand. I believe you, she said. I love you, Mama. Clara's throat tightened. I love you too, baby. More than anything. She left the children and walked outside. Emmett was on the porch staring up at the stars. Can't sleep, she asked. Haven't tried. She sat down beside him. Their shoulders touched. What are you thinking about? He was quiet for a long moment. My brother. What about him? The night before he died, we sat on this porch, just like this, looking at the same stars. His voice was rough. He told me he was scared. First time in his life, he admitted being scared of anything. What did you say? I told him there was nothing to be scared of, that the fever would break and he'd be fine. Emmett's hands clenched in his lap. I lied to him, looked him right in the eye and lied, and the next morning, he was gone. Clara didn't know what to say, so she just took his hand. I've been lying to myself for 5 years, he continued, telling myself I was fine alone, that I didn't need anyone, that it was easier this way. He looked at her. Then you showed up, you and those children, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to have something worth protecting. Emmett, I'm not going to let them take you, he said. I don't care about the law. I don't care about Finch or Samuel or anyone else. You're mine now, and I protect what's mine. She leaned her head against his shoulder. We protect each other, she said. That's how this works. They sat together in the darkness, waiting for dawn. The morning broke gray and cold. Clara woke to the sound of hoofbeats, multiple horses coming fast. She was on her feet before she was fully awake, heart-pounding hands reaching for the children. Emmett! He was already at the door, rifle in hand. Stay inside, he said. Keep the children back. Clara gathered Maggie, Theo, and Bess behind the stove. She put William in Maggie's arms. Don't come out, she said. No matter what you hear, stay here. Mama, promise me, Maggie. Her daughter nodded, eyes wide with fear. I promise. Clara walked to the window. 3 riders had stopped in the yard. Samuel was in front, sitting on a borrowed horse that was too big for him. Behind him were 2 other men deputies, judging by their badges, and behind them, staying back, was Jasper Finch. Samuel dismounted. He looked older than Clara remembered, thinner. His clothes were rumpled, his beard patchy, his eyes bloodshot. But his smile was the same. That charming, lying smile that had fooled her so many years ago. Clara, he called out. Clara, honey, come on out. I just want to talk. Emmett stood on the porch, rifle raised. She doesn't want to see you, he said. Samuel's smile flickered. Now, friend, I don't know who you think you are, but that's my wife in there. My children. I got every right. You lost your rights when you left them to starve. One of the deputies stepped forward. Sir, we're going to need you to lower that weapon. Emmett didn't move. This is my land, he said. My home. I got every right to defend it. Against what? We're not here to cause trouble. Mr. Dawson just wants to speak to his wife. Then let him speak. From right there. She can hear him fine. Samuel's face darkened. This is ridiculous. Clara, come out here right now. Clara's hand went to the door. She could hide, stay inside, let Emmett handle it. But she was done hiding. She opened the door and stepped onto the porch. Samuel's face lit up. There she is. There's my girl. Clara, honey, I've been looking everywhere for you. Clara looked at him, at this man she had married at 18. This man she had followed west. This man who had given her 4 children and then abandoned them all without a second thought. She felt nothing. No love, no hate, not even fear. Just emptiness. Hello, Samuel, she said. He started toward the porch. Emmett raised the rifle. That's far enough. Samuel stopped, hands up. Easy, friend. I just want to talk to my wife." "Then talk." Samuel looked at Clara, his face arranged in an expression of wounded innocence. "Clara, I don't know what this man has told you. I don't know what lies he's been spreading, but I never abandoned you. I went to Cheyenne for work, just like I said. I got sick, terrible sick. Couldn't send word. By the time I recovered, you were gone." Clara's jaw tightened. "That's not true." "It is true, I swear to God." "Don't." Her voice was cold. "Don't you dare invoke God after what you did." Samuel's expression shifted. Just for a second. Something ugly flickered in his eyes. Then the mask was back. "Clara, honey, I know you're upset. I know things have been hard, but I'm here now. I'm here to take you home." "This is my home." "No, it's not. This is some stranger's cabin in the middle of nowhere. Our home was a shack with a broken stove and no food in the cupboard. Our home was where our children went to bed hungry every night while you promised things would get better." Clara stepped forward. "Our home was where I watched our baby get sicker and sicker and couldn't do anything because you took every penny we had to Cheyenne." Samuel's face reddened. "I was trying to provide for us. You were gambling, drinking, doing everything except being a husband and father." "That's not—" "I have witnesses, Samuel. People who saw you in Cheyenne. People who know exactly what you were doing while your children starved." Samuel's mouth opened, then closed. He shot a look at Finch, who sat motionless on his horse. "Clara." His voice changed, harder now, the charm falling away. "You're my wife. Those are my children. The law says you abandoned us. The law says you left us to die." Clara pulled out the paper Sheriff Tate had given her. "I have a declaration from the sheriff stating that you made no claim to us for over 2 months, that you showed no concern for our welfare, that in his opinion you forfeited your rights as a husband and father." Samuel's face contorted. "That paper ain't worth nothing." "Maybe not. But it's enough to make a judge listen. It's enough to give me a hearing." Clara folded the paper and put it back in her pocket. "Go home, Samuel. Go back to wherever you came from. We're done." "You don't get to decide that." "Yes, I do." She stood tall, feeling Emmett's presence behind her like a wall. "For the first time in my life, I get to decide." Samuel stood very still, his hands clenched at his sides. Then he laughed. A cold, ugly sound. "You think you've got it all figured out, don't you? Think you can just throw me away like garbage and play house with this cripple?" Emmett moved forward. Clara put her hand on his arm. "Let him talk," she said quietly. "Let him show everyone who he really is." Samuel heard her, his face twisted. "You want to see who I really am?" "Fine, I'll show you." He pointed at Emmett. "That man stole my wife, my children. That's a crime. I want him arrested." One of the deputies shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Dawson, sir, we can't just—" "You can and you will. I got witnesses. People in town who saw her living here with him for months." Samuel's voice rose to a shout. "She's a whore and he's a thief, and I want them both locked up." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Finch rode forward. "Gentlemen," he said smoothly, "perhaps we should all calm down. Mr. Dawson is understandably upset. His wife has been taken advantage of by an unscrupulous man. Surely we can resolve this without—" "Shut up, Finch." Everyone turned. A new rider was approaching. Sheriff Marcus Tate, his badge glinting in the morning light. He rode into the yard and dismounted, looking at the scene with weary eyes. "I figured you'd show up here, Dawson. Couldn't just leave well enough alone." "Sheriff, this man has my wife." "I know what he has. I also know what you did." Tate pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "Got a telegram this morning from the sheriff in Dodge City. Seems you left some debts behind, some very angry creditors, some of whom have sworn out warrants for your arrest." Samuel's face went pale. Those are lies. There's also a woman in Cheyenne who claims you stole $50 from her. Another one who says you sold her a horse that didn't belong to you." Tate unfolded the paper. "You want me to keep going?" Samuel took a step back. "Now," Tate said, "the way I see it, you got two choices. You can leave, right now, ride out of this territory and never come back. Or I can arrest you, send you back to Dodge City, and let them sort out which jail cell you belong in." Samuel looked around wildly, at the deputies who wouldn't meet his eyes, at Finch, who was slowly edging his horse backward, at Clara, who stood unmoved on the porch. "Clara," he said. "Clara, please. I'm your husband. Don't let them do this to me." Clara looked at him. This man she had once loved. This man who had promised her everything and delivered nothing. "Goodbye, Samuel," she said. Something broke in his face. The mask crumbled completely, revealing the weak, desperate man underneath. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "You'll all regret this." He turned and stumbled toward his horse. The deputies moved aside to let him pass. Finch spoke up. "Sheriff Shirley." "Mr. Finch." Tate's voice was pleasant but cold. "I'd suggest you head home too, unless you want me to start asking questions about how Samuel Dawson suddenly had enough money to pay off his debts in town. Debts that got paid the same day you had a private meeting with him at the boarding house." Finch's face went very still. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything, just making an observation." Tate smiled without warmth. "Have a good day, Mr. Finch." Finch held his gaze for a long moment. Then he turned his horse and rode away without another word. Samuel mounted his borrowed horse. He looked back at Clara one more time. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is." He rode away. The deputies followed. In moments, the yard was empty except for Sheriff Tate. Clara's legs gave out. She would have fallen if Emmett hadn't caught her. He held her upright, his arms strong around her waist. "It's over," he said. "It's over." But she couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The terror that had been holding her together for weeks suddenly released its grip, and she was falling into a darkness that had no bottom. "Clara, Clara, look at me." She forced her eyes open. Emmett's face swam into focus. "You did it," he said. "You faced him, and you won." "I didn't do anything. The sheriff helped, but you stood your ground. You didn't break. You didn't back down." His voice cracked. "I've never seen anything braver in my life." Clara looked at him, at this man who had saved her, protected her, fought for her. "I couldn't have done it without you," she whispered. "Yes, you could have. You're the strongest person I know." She shook her head. "I'm tired of being strong. I'm tired of fighting alone." "You're not alone." He cupped her face in his hands. "You'll never be alone again." She believed him. Behind them, Sheriff Tate cleared his throat. "I'll be heading back to town," he said. "But I wanted to let you know Samuel Dawson left owing money to half the territory. Word is he's heading south. Mexico, probably. He won't be back." Clara looked at him. "How can you be sure?" "Because I told him if he ever sets foot in my jurisdiction again, I'll personally escort him to prison." Tate tipped his hat. "Take care of yourself, Mrs. Dawson. Mr. Cole." He rode away. Clara and Emmett stood alone in the yard. "Is it really over?" she asked. "It's really over." She turned and looked at the cabin. Through the window she could see Maggie's face pressed against the glass, watching. "I need to tell the children," she said. "I'll come with you." They walked inside together. The children swarmed her the moment she stepped through the door. Maggie threw her arms around Clara's waist. Theo grabbed her skirt. Bess clutched at her legs. "Mama! Mama, is he gone? Is the bad man gone?" Clara knelt and gathered them all close. "He's gone," she said. "He's never coming back." Maggie pulled back her face fierce. "Good. I hate him." "Maggie." "I do. I hate him for leaving us. I hate him for making you scared. I hate him for everything." Tears streamed down her daughter's face. I don't want to hate him, Mama, but I do. Clara pulled her close again. I know, baby. I know. It's okay to feel that way. They held each other for a long time. The fire crackled. William cooed in his cradle. Outside, the wind had died down, leaving only silence. Finally, Emmett spoke. Who's hungry? Bess's head popped up. Me. Me too, Theo said quietly. Clara laughed. A real laugh, the first in weeks. Then let's eat, she said. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara and Emmett sat on the porch. The stars were out, scattered across the sky like spilled diamonds. Thank you, Clara said. For what? For everything. For saving us. For fighting for us. For not giving up even when it would have been easier. Emmett was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Anything. The day I found you in the snow, I almost didn't stop. I was tired. It was cold. I had supplies to get home. He paused. But then I saw Maggie's feet, bare in the snow, and I thought about my brother, about how no one came to help him when he needed it most. Emmett. I stopped because of him, because he would have wanted me to, because I knew that if I rode past you and your children, I'd never forgive myself. He looked at her. But that was the beginning. Everything after staying fighting, falling in love, that was because of you. Clara's heart stopped. Falling in love. He reached over and took her hand. I know it's not proper, he said. I know your husband just left. I know we should wait, do things right, give people time to forget. His grip tightened. But I'm tired of waiting. I've been waiting my whole life for something I thought would never come. And then you walked into my life and everything changed. Emmett. I love you, Clara. I love your children. I love this life we're building together. His voice broke. Please tell me I'm not the only one. She looked at him. At this man who had given her everything and asked for nothing. You're not the only one, she said. He closed his eyes, let out a breath he'd been holding for weeks, maybe years. Then marry me, he said. Not because of the law, not because of what people think. Marry me because I love you, and you love me, and that's enough. Clara smiled. Yes, she said. He opened his eyes. Yes. Yes, Emmett Cole, I'll marry you. He pulled her into his arms, held her tight like he was afraid she'd disappear. Tomorrow, he said against her hair. We'll go to town tomorrow. Find the pastor. Make it official. Tomorrow, she agreed. They sat together under the stars, wrapped in each other's arms. And for the first time in her life, Clara wasn't afraid of what tomorrow would bring. They married on a Sunday morning in April when the prairie was just beginning to remember how to be green. Pastor Whitmore performed the ceremony in his small church at the edge of Medicine Lodge. Ruth Jennings stood as witness, her weathered face soft with something that might have been joy. Sheriff Tate came too, standing at the back with his hat in his hands, nodding once when Emmett slipped the ring onto Clara's finger. It was a simple band, iron, not gold. Emmett's mother had worn it until her hands swelled with sickness. It ain't much, he'd said when he showed it to her the night before. But it's real. It'll last. Clara had slipped it on and felt its weight settle against her skin like a promise. Now, standing in the church with her children around her, she looked at the man who had become her husband and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. I now pronounce you man and wife, Pastor Whitmore said. Mr. Cole, you may kiss your bride. Emmett leaned forward, hesitated, then pressed his lips to hers. Gentle, brief, but enough to make Clara's heart skip. Maggie made a face. Ew, Theo laughed. Actually laughed out loud for the first time since they'd arrived at the cabin. Bess clapped her hands. Mama got kissed. Mama got kissed. Even William seemed to understand something important had happened. He gurgled in Ruth's arms, his fat fists waving at the light streaming through the windows. Clara looked at her family. Her real family. the one she had chosen. "Let's go home," she said. They rode back to the cabin in the wagon the children piled in the back. Clara sitting beside Emmett with her hand on his knee. The road was muddy from spring rain, and the wheels stuck twice, but no one complained. Ruth followed on her horse, grumbling about her old bones, but smiling when she thought no one was looking. At the cabin, they found a surprise. A table had been set up in the yard covered with a cloth that Clara recognized as Ruth's. On it sat a pie, a loaf of bread, and a jar of wildflowers that someone had gathered from the fields. "Who did this?" Clara asked. Ruth dismounted, trying to look innocent. "Might have asked a few folks to help out." A few folks. As if on cue, people began to emerge from behind the barn. The Hendricks family from the general store. A young couple Clara had seen at church. An old man who lived alone on the next homestead over. Even Sheriff Tate had somehow beaten them back, probably taking a shortcut Clara didn't know. They brought food. They brought gifts. They brought congratulations and well wishes and the simple, precious gift of acceptance. Clara stood in the middle of it all, overwhelmed. "I don't understand," she said to Ruth. "These people barely know me." "They know enough." Ruth put a hand on her shoulder. "They know you're strong. They know you're good. They know you stood up to a man who tried to take what wasn't his anymore." She squeezed gently. "That counts for something out here." Clara looked around at the faces surrounding her. Some she recognized, some she didn't. But they were all smiling, all welcoming her into their community like she belonged there. Maybe she did. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick. "Thank you all." The celebration lasted until sunset. People ate, drank, talked, laughed. Someone produced a fiddle and played songs Clara hadn't heard since she was a girl in Ohio. Maggie danced with Theo, both of them stumbling over their feet, but grinning anyway. Bess fell asleep in Ruth's lap, exhausted from excitement. When the last guest finally left, Clara stood on the porch and watched the stars come out. Emmett appeared beside her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. "Someday," he said, handing her one. "Someday." She took a sip. "I didn't expect any of that." "Me neither. Ruth's been planning it for weeks, apparently. Swore everyone to secrecy." "She's a good woman." "She is." Emmett was quiet for a moment. "Clara." "Yes. Are you happy?" She turned to look at him. At this man who had pulled her out of the snow and given her back her life. "Yes," she said. "I'm happy." He nodded, something easing in his face. "Good. That's all I wanted." They stood together in the darkness, drinking coffee, listening to the wind move through the grass. "Emmett." "Yeah. I love you." He went still. She hadn't said it before. Not those exact words. "I love you too," he said. "More than I know how to say." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Then don't say it. Just show me. Every day for the rest of our lives." "I can do that." They stayed on the porch until the coffee went cold and the stars wheeled overhead. Then they went inside to their home, to their family, to the life they were building together. The months that followed were the happiest Clara had ever known. Summer came in full, turning the prairie gold and green. The garden flourished under Clara's care. Beans climbed their poles. Squash spread across the ground. Tomatoes ripened on the vine, fat and red and perfect. Emmett worked from dawn to dusk, mending fences, tending animals, building a new room onto the cabin for the children. Clara worked beside him, learning to use tools she'd never held before, developing calluses on her hands that she wore like badges of honor. Maggie grew taller, her face losing its childish roundness. She helped with the younger children, took over some of the cooking, and began asking questions about boys that made Clara's heart ache with the speed of passing time. Theo came fully back to himself. He talked now, constantly asking Emmett endless questions about horses and cattle and the way things worked. He shadowed Emmett everywhere, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. Bess remained Bess. Wild, joyful, fearless. She named every animal on the homestead and cried for a week when one of the chickens died. And William. William grew fat and healthy, crawling everywhere, getting into everything, saying his first words. "Mama," he said one morning, reaching for Clara with sticky fingers. Then a week later, looking at Emmett, "Pa." Emmett froze, stared at the baby like he'd been struck. "What did he say?" Clara smiled. "He said Pa." "But I'm not, he knows I'm not." "Emmett." She walked to him, put her hand on his chest. "You are. In every way that matters, you are." He looked at her, his eyes bright with something he couldn't quite contain. "Pa," William said again, laughing, reaching for the man who had become his father. Emmett scooped him up and held him close. "Yeah, little man," he said, his voice rough. "I'm your pa." Clara watched them together, her heart so full she thought it might burst. This was what she had been searching for. What she had almost died trying to find. A family. A home. A place where she belonged. Fall arrived with cooler nights and shorter days. The harvest came in better than Clara had dared hope. They stored vegetables in the root cellar, smoked meat for the winter, put up preserves until the shelves in the pantry groaned. Ruth came by regularly, bringing news from town, and advice Clara didn't always want but usually needed. "You're doing good," Ruth said one afternoon, watching Clara knead bread. "Better than I expected. Is that a compliment? Take it however you want." Ruth helped herself to coffee. "Heard something you should know." Clara's hands stilled. "What?" "Samuel Dawson's dead." The world went silent. Clara stared at Ruth, unable to process the words. "What?" "Died in Mexico. Knife fight over a card game is what I heard." Ruth shrugged. Seemed fitting. Clara didn't know what to feel. Relief, grief. Both, neither. "Are you sure?" "Sure as I can be. Sheriff got confirmation from the authorities down there." Ruth studied her face. "You all right?" Clara resumed, kneading, her hands moving automatically. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I should feel something. Shouldn't I?" "Should ain't got nothing to do with it. You feel what you feel." Ruth stood. "He was a bad man, Clara. Bad husband, bad father. The world's better off without him. He was the father of my children. By blood, maybe. Not by choice. Not by love." Ruth put a hand on her shoulder. "Emmett Cole is their father now. In all the ways that count." Clara nodded slowly. "You're right. I usually am." Ruth headed for the door. "Take care of yourself, and tell that husband of yours I expect a chicken for Christmas." She left. Clara stood alone in the kitchen, her hands covered in flour, her mind far away. Samuel was dead. She waited for the grief to come, for the memories of the boy she had married, the man she had loved before he became something else. But there was nothing. Just emptiness where the pain used to be. She finished the bread, put it in the oven, and went to find Emmett. He was in the barn brushing copper while Theo watched. "Emmett!" He looked up, saw her face. "What is it?" "Samuel's dead." Theo went rigid. Emmett set down the brush and walked to her. "How?" "Knife fight. In Mexico." Clara shook her head. "I don't know how to feel." Emmett pulled her into his arms. "You don't have to feel anything. He was their father. He was the man who gave them life. That's not the same thing." Emmett stroked her hair. "You don't owe him grief, Clara. You don't owe him anything." She leaned into him, letting his strength hold her up. "What do we tell the children?" "The truth, when they're ready. And if they're never ready, then we wait, as long as it takes." She pulled back and looked at him, at this man who had become everything to her. "I love you," she said. "I know." He kissed her forehead. "I love you too." Theo cleared his throat behind them. Is my real pa dead?" Clara turned to her son. He was pale, his eyes wide, but his voice was steady. "Yes, sweetheart. He is." Theo was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I'm not sad. That's okay." "Is that wrong to not be sad?" Clara knelt and took his hands. "No, baby, it's not wrong. You feel whatever you feel. There's no right or wrong about it." "He left us," Theo said. "He left us in the cold. I almost died. Bess almost died. William almost died." His voice trembled. "I don't want to be sad for someone who did that." "Then don't be." "But he was my pa." "By blood," Clara said, echoing Ruth's words. "Not by choice. Not by love." Theo looked at Emmett. "You're my pa now, aren't you?" Emmett's voice was rough. "If you'll have me." Theo walked to him and wrapped his arms around Emmett's waist. "I'll have you," he said. Emmett held him tight, his eyes meeting Clara's over the boy's head. In that moment, she knew. Whatever had come before, whatever pain and loss and fear they had survived, it had led them here. To this family, to this love. It was worth it. All of it was worth it. Winter returned, but this time Clara was ready. The root cellar was full. The woodpile was stacked high. The cabin was warm and tight. The new room finished just before the first snow fell. They gathered around the fire on Christmas Eve, all 6 of them, plus Ruth, who had come for dinner and ended up staying the night when the storm blew in. Emmett had carved wooden toys for each of the children. A horse for Theo, of course. A doll for Maggie. A rabbit for Bess. A set of blocks for William. Clara had sewn new clothes, dresses for the girls, shirts for the boys, a warm coat for Emmett that had taken her months to make in secret. But the best gift wasn't something that could be wrapped. "I have something to tell everyone," Clara said after dinner. The children looked up. Emmett frowned, concerned. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine." Clara smiled, her hand drifting to her stomach. "Everything's wonderful." Emmett's frown deepened. Then understanding dawned. "Clara, are you—" "I'm going to have a baby." Silence. Then Maggie shrieked, jumping up and running to Clara. "A baby! A real baby!" "All babies are real, Maggie." "You know what I mean." Maggie hugged her tight. "Oh, Mama, this is the best Christmas ever." Theo grinned. Bess clapped her hands. William, not understanding but catching the excitement, banged his blocks together and laughed. Ruth shook her head, smiling. "About time. I was wondering when you two would get around to it." But Emmett hadn't moved. Clara looked at him, suddenly worried. "Emmett, are you—" He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. "A baby," he whispered against her hair. "Our baby. Are you happy?" He pulled back and she saw tears on his cheeks. Emmett Cole, who never cried, was weeping. "I didn't think I'd ever have this," he said. "A wife, children, a family." His voice broke. "I thought I'd die alone in this cabin, forgotten by everyone." "You're not alone," Clara said. "You'll never be alone again." "I know." He kissed her deep and long, not caring that the children were watching. "I know." Ruth cleared her throat. All right. Some of us are trying to digest our dinner." Everyone laughed. Later that night, after the children were asleep and Ruth was snoring by the fire, Clara and Emmett sat on the porch. The storm had passed. The stars were out bright and cold against the black sky. "Emmett." "Yeah." "What do you want to name the baby?" He thought about it. "If it's a boy, I'd like to name him after my brother, Daniel." "Daniel Cole. I like it." "And if it's a girl?" Clara smiled. "I was thinking Ruth, after someone who helped save us." "Ruth Cole." Emmett nodded. "She'd hate it. She'd pretend to complain for years. That's why it's perfect." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their breath cloud in the cold air. Clara. "Yes, thank you." "For what?" "For staying, for choosing me, for giving me everything I never knew I wanted." He took her hand. "You saved my life. You know that, don't you? I thought you saved mine. Maybe we saved each other. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Maybe we did. The baby came in early summer on a night when the prairie wind was soft and warm. Ruth delivered her talking Clara through the pain with her usual blunt efficiency. Emmett paced outside the cabin wearing a path in the dirt until Theo came to get him. Pa, you can come in now. He rushed inside and found Clara in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a bundle wrapped in white cloth. It's a girl, she said. Emmett approached slowly, like he was afraid he might break something. Clara held out the bundle. Do you want to hold her? He took his daughter in his arms. She was tiny, red-faced, her eyes squeezed shut. Wisps of dark hair covered her head. She's beautiful, he whispered. She looks like you. Poor thing. Clara laughed, then winced. Don't make me laugh. Everything hurts. The other children crowded around, peering at their new sister. She's so small, Maggie said. You were that small once, Clara told her. Was not. Were too. What's her name? Theo asked. Emmett looked at Clara. She nodded. Ruth, he said. Ruth Clara Cole. From the corner, old Ruth made a sound somewhere between a sob and a cough. You didn't have to do that, she said, her voice rough. We wanted to, Clara said. Ruth walked over and looked at the baby. Her weathered face softened. Well, she said, I suppose she's acceptable. High praise, Emmett said. It's all you're getting. Ruth touched the baby's cheek, gentle as a whisper. Welcome to the world, little one. You've got a good family. Better than most. Clara watched her husband holding their daughter. Their other children gathered around Ruth, standing guard like she always did. This was her family, her home, her life. Everything she had suffered, everything she had lost, had led her here. To this moment. To these people. To this love that she had never expected and couldn't imagine living without. The seasons turned. Spring to summer, to fall to winter, and around again. The children grew. Maggie became a young woman, beautiful and fierce with her mother's strength and her own stubborn will. Theo grew tall and capable, taking over more and more of the ranch work, planning for the day when the land would be his. Bess stayed wild, eventually marrying a rancher from the next county who loved her spirit. William and Ruth grew up together, inseparable, two peas in a pod. Clara and Emmett grew older too. Gray crept into their hair. Lines deepened around their eyes. But the love between them only strengthened, forged by years of shared struggle and shared joy. They named the homestead Stillwater for the creek that ran through it, quiet on the surface, but always moving underneath. One evening, many years later, Clara sat on the porch watching the sunset. Emmett lowered himself into the chair beside her, his bad leg aching more than it used to, his movements slower, but still sure. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "That day you found us," she said. "In the snow. My children barefoot, my baby dying in my arms. That was a long time ago. I know, but I think about it sometimes. What would have happened if you hadn't come? If you hadn't stopped?" Emmett reached over and took her hand. His skin was rough, his fingers gnarled from decades of work, but his grip was still strong. "I thank God every day that I did," he said. "So do I." They sat in silence, watching the sky turn orange, then pink, then purple. "Emmett." "Yeah. I love you." He smiled the same smile that had warmed her heart for 30 years. "I love you too, Clara. Always have. Always will." She leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling his heartbeat steady and sure against her cheek. Behind them, through the open door, she could hear their grandchildren laughing. The smell of bread baking drifted out from the kitchen. Somewhere in the distance, a cow lowed. This was her life, her love, her home. And it was enough. It was everything. Clara closed her eyes and let the peace wash over her. She had walked through fire and snow and darkness. She had lost everything and found it again. She had survived. And in the end, she had found exactly what she had been searching for all along. Not just safety, not just shelter, but a love that would last forever. A family that would never leave. A home that would always welcome her. The cold came again that winter as it always did. But this time, and for all the winters that followed, it found no way in.